Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm 26 years old, and I have been type 1 diabetic since November of 2004.
Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. drinkag1.com/juicebox. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at cozyearth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at cozyearth.com. Are you an adult living with type 1 or the caregiver of someone who is and a U.S. resident? If you are, I'd love it if you would go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and take the survey. When you complete that survey, your answers are used to move type 1 diabetes research of all kinds. So if you'd like to help with type 1 research, but don't have time to go to a doctor or an investigation, t1dexchange.org/juicebox. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox. The episode you're listening to is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. You can get your diabetes testing supplies the same way we do from US Med.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm 26 years old, and I have been type 1 diabetic since November of 2004.
2004, 1424, that's 20 years. So you were 6 when you were diagnosed?
Yes.
Wow, gosh. Does it feel like a long time, or how does it feel?
I don't remember, I don't remember life before I was diagnosed.
Yeah, you don't have a before and after.
No.
Do you think that's a good thing, or does that make you sad sometimes?
I guess it's a good thing. Like, I didn't feel like I had to, stop eating something. And, I mean, pretty much now with the insulin pumps, I eat anything in moderation.
Mm-hmm. So you don't feel restricted, I guess is the question?
No,
Good.
I know, before I was on an insulin pump, with the technology, the Dexcom, I did restrict my eating a little more. But, now that I know my blood sugar, 24/7, I'm almost a little bit, bad about eating things sometimes. I'll eat things that maybe I wouldn't have eaten, for the sensors and stuff.
Explain. Tell me how.
I have ice cream, every day, dessert time at dinner, after dinner.
Are you telling me that because you can see your blood sugars now and you're able to manage it well, that you eat more ice cream than you would have back when you were worried, I don't know how this is going to go?
Probably.
Oh, is that what you're saying? Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's interesting. And do you think that's been detrimental to you, or do you think that's been something that's opened your life up?
I mean, my A1C is pretty good. It's I think it was 6.3 before, the last time. I go to my endocrinologist next week, so.
Do you look at your variability, how up and down your blood sugars are? Do you look at your time and range, stuff like that?
Yeah. I've actually found that the Gluco app shows a better time and range for some reason than the Clarity app.
Is it set at a different range? Is the Clarity app?
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be because, I only have it for my doctor's sake because, I guess in order to download my data, they need the Gluco app and the Clarity app, and never even touched any of the settings. I do what they say.
So I was going to say the range, what's the range that you think of as your goal, and what range is on those apps?
Well, I'd have to go to the apps to look at them. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Well, where do you like to keep your blood sugar? Where are you most comfortable with it?
70 and some 70 is too low.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here, I'll tell you this.
Go ahead.
So, and this is something I was planning to bring up later in the conversation, but I have a diabetic alert dog, right?
Okay.
And her alert numbers, like we had to train her to alert at a certain number, and she alerts at 90 and 190. She'll like start alerting like a half hour even before I'm there. Like, so she's like even ahead of the Dexcom.
She can feel like sense your rises and falls, you think?
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I'm like not necessarily always aware of hyper or hypoglycemia. So like, you know, people say, oh, why do you need a Dexcom or why do you need a diabetic alert dog if you have a Dexcom?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I say, well, sometimes she's more accurate. Like there'll be days when my Dexcom like is like failing and it's like 100 points off in range.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. Let's go. How long have you had the dog for? Like, what made you think like I really should get a diabetes alert dog?
So actually, I read the book, and I believe you had her on the podcast, Ellen Coach by Stephanie Shaheen.
Yeah, sure.
And I found that one day at my local library, and I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. What is this all about? So I checked it out from the library, and then like it took a while to convince my parents. At that point, I was like 17 or 18.
Mm-hmm.
I had enrolled in community college just because, like, you know, I didn't really want to go live in a dorm and not have like.
It felt better to live at home and commute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, when you went to them about the dog, I imagine they can be expensive. So
yeah.
What was their response?
Well, they were like, let's think about it for a while. A couple of years later, I met somebody through one of the local JDRF chapters who had one of these diabetic alert dogs. And my mom and I went to go meet her just like to see what it was all about and like what the dog was like and if it was like a sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
When we came home from that meeting, my mom's like, okay, yes, you can do that.
Oh, wow. Cool. They were able to help you get it all set up and pay for it and stuff like that?
I did a GoFundMe.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. And that worked? How much did the dog cost?
Am I allowed to like mention the specific organization or no?
I mean, if you want to, sure.
Okay. As I said, it was the same organization that Stephanie Shaheen's daughter, Elle, went through.
Mm-hmm.
And that's CARES, Inc. out of Concordia, Kansas. Back when I got the dog in October of 2021, they charged $5,000. I think when Elle got her dog, they charged $2,500 or $3,500. And now I think they charge $7,500, which is still a lot cheaper than
some of the private
like
companies.
Diabetic Alert Dogs of America, which charges like $30,000.
Yeah,
like,
geez.
So
that's a lot. Hey, for $30,000, you could probably pay a guy to walk around behind you and just like,
yeah.
You know, like look at your CGM constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of money for a dog, right? Well, that's nice. So your parents were able to help you. And then how old were you when you got him or her? I'm sorry, what was the dog, a boy or girl?
I should have started with that. Her name is Pretzel.
How old were you got Pretzel?
I was 23.
Okay. All right. A few years.
Yeah. I got her like right. I'd say the pandemic was still going on, but like it was October 2021. So, so it wasn't like lockdown time. It was just like, you know, people being cautious and like, you know, as an immunocompromised person, I try to be cautious about COVID myself. Like,
sure.
I don't want to make this political and all that, which I don't think it should be political, but, you know.
You just try not to get sick if you can, right?
I actually had COVID in January of 2023. And basically all I had was like a postnasal drip. And like I tested negative within like 3 days.
Wow.
So,
when I got COVID, I was sick for a while and it hit me pretty hard. I was vaccinated and everything, and I just got it hit me hard. So nobody wants to be sick. Do you have other issues, like other medical issues?
Oh yeah, I do.
You're like, oh yeah, definitely. Hold on.
This is the thing. Sometimes I post anonymously in the Juicebox group. I mention these other disabilities, and like, you know, like if I say this, they're gonna know like, oh yeah, that's that person with these conditions. So it's interesting. I was born with a neurological condition called hydrocephalus,
sure,
which is water on the brain. It's a buildup of cerebral spinal fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my first of several brain surgeries at 3 days old.
Wow.
Then, when I was 6, is when I got diagnosed with type 1. We believe I caught that. Well, I don't want to say caught it, but inherited it from my grandfather, who was type 2, and my aunt, who's type 1. She would actually be considered like adult diagnosis because I think she was 29 when she got it. In the last couple of years, they've changed the terminology about type 1 just being about children and stuff. I have an anxiety disorder, which I guess a lot of people have, but mine's kind of bad. And then more recently, I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism.
Okay. Oh, wow. So, and do you have any long-term impacts from the hydrocephaly? I mean, there's a lot that can come with it, right? You've probably heard me talk about US Med and how simple it is to reorder with US Med using their email system. But did you know that if you don't see the email and you're set up for this, you have to set it up. They don't just randomly call you, but I'm set up to be called if I don't respond to the email because I don't trust myself 100%. So one time I didn't respond to the email and the phone rings at the house. It's like, ring, you know how it works. And I picked it up. I was like, hello. And it was just the recording. It was like, US Med. Doesn't actually sound like that, but you know what I'm saying. It said, hey, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's basically like, hey, your order's ready. You want us to send it? Push this button if you want us to send it. Or if you'd like to wait, I think it lets you put it off like a couple of weeks or push this button for that. That's pretty much it. I pushed the button to send it. And a few days later, box right at my door. That's it. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits checked now and get started with US Med. Dexcom, Omnipod, Tandem, Freestyle. They've got all your favorites. Even that new eyelet pump. Check them out now at usmed.com/juicebox or by calling 888-721-1514. There are links in the show notes of your podcast player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and to all of the sponsors. The Contour NextGen blood glucose meter is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and it's entirely possible that it is less expensive in cash than you're paying right now for your meter through your insurance company. That's right. If you go to my link, contournext.com/juicebox, you're going to find links to Walmart, Amazon, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Kroger, and Meijer. You could be paying more right now through your insurance for your test strips and meter than you would pay through my link for the Contour NextGen and Contour Next test strips in cash. What am I saying? My link may be cheaper out of your pocket than you're paying right now, even with your insurance. And I don't know what meter you have right now. I can't say that. But what I can say for sure is that the Contour NextGen meter is accurate. It is reliable, and it is the meter that we've been using for years. contournext.com/juicebox. And if you already have a Contour meter and you're buying test strips, doing so through the Juicebox Podcast link will help to support the show.
Yes, I actually have a head tick, so my camera's not on, but if my camera was on, you would see my tick that I do like uncontrollably.
Is it pretty constant?
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't know when I'm doing it. So I recently found out that Billie Eilish has Tourette's and she has a tick. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know obviously a ton about hydrocephaly, but I know that it can kind of impact like motor development. I'm trying to remember what I know, like maybe vision and hearing, stuff like that, or cognitive stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Like I have strabismus, which is a lazy eye. And that they said was from the hydrocephalus.
Okay.
I don't remember if it was your group or another group. I did remember talking to another parent of a person who had type 1 and hydrocephalus because I was wondering if they were connected somehow. And I think like 2 parents commented saying, oh, my kid has both.
I see.
Yeah.
So you don't meet a lot of people that have it?
No.
The mix. Yeah. And what about, how does the autism diagnosis come, as an adult or as a child?
Yeah, that actually came this past spring 2024.
How do you get to that? Like, what's going on in your life where you end up being in a situation where somebody's trying to diagnose you? Like, what was happening that made you think, like, I need help or intervention or whatever?
And this is where I said I didn't want to go into all my problems because I post anonymously on the diabetes group a lot.
Well, you don't have to say anything you don't want to. Don't worry. Yeah.
But, like, like, quite frankly, I haven't been employable. And, like, I was wondering, is it me? Is it my other disabilities? Is it just the fact that I'm saying I was on job applications saying yes because I didn't want to lie, but then I switched to prefer not to answer. And I'm like, well, is that just as bad?
So you were applying for jobs and just not getting them, and you thought, like, is this because I'm saying I have diabetes? Is it because I'm saying, like, or are they seeing something about me that I don't realize? Is that the idea?
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't done unemployment yet. I'm a little hesitant too because, like, I don't, and this is going to go into, like, sort of a semi-political thing, but I don't like how they limit the amount of money in your bank account. That just seems a little weird to me. I know there's other...
Hold on, I don't know what you mean. Who limits money in your bank account?
I forget if it's SSI or SSDI, but one of them you have to only have like $2,000 or $3,000 in your bank account at a time.
So you're receiving some sort of public assistance, and if you make too much money, they'll take it from you.
Yes, okay. And that's why I haven't joined SSI yet. But I've been out of a job since July again.
What kind of job do you feel like you would enjoy?
Well, honestly, I go on your group and I say, what kind of jobs are hiring for people who want to help people with diabetes but do not have a college degree? Because, like, that's the other thing. On an academic level, I couldn't get a college degree because in addition to all my other disabilities, I have something called dyscalculia, which is basically math dyslexia.
Okay.
And I went to a state school. First, I went to community college, and they were like, well, we can't let you graduate with an associate's unless you pass the math classes. But I was going to tutoring like 4 days a week and still failing.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, well, here, try this state school, and you might have better luck. So I got the neuropsych eval done with a state school. Because it was a state school and rather large, the disability services place was not very good. They forgot my name multiple times, and they also lost my paperwork multiple times.
Okay.
And then when I got into the talking with them about math, they were like, well, there's a chance we can let you skip math, but there's a chance not. And at that point, vocational rehab was like, Julia, you're 24, 25. I don't exactly remember how old I was, but, like, you don't have much job experience. If I were you, like, I'd just kind of drop out and see what you can get for work. Because, like, with all my things, I was not...
You weren't having a lot of success at school, and...
Yeah.
And
I was too overwhelmed to work part-time at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand.
And, yeah.
Can I ask, like, when you get looked at for somebody's going to try to make a diagnosis for you and they come back with an autism diagnosis, do you know what it is that they saw that led to that diagnosis? And do you agree with it?
I didn't even consider it until, like, my therapist brought it up to me this past winter, I think. I was in special ed, K-12. I was around autistic people, but I didn't consider myself like them. Mm-hmm. And yes, I know that autism is a spectrum. I also should clarify that I was mostly around autistic boys. And, like, I don't want to say anything that's inaccurate because I was only recently diagnosed and I'm still trying to learn more about autism. But my understanding is that boys and girls present differently, and it's much harder to diagnose both autism and ADHD in girls and women.
I see.
Than boys and men.
Wow, it's a lot because now you've got to, like, learn all about this, like, this new world that you're being told you fit into, but you're not even certain if you do. Yeah,
thankfully, I have discovered some people commented on one of my posts one time and said, well, there's an ADHD and T1D group, and there's an autism with T1D group. So I joined those, and they're much smaller in stature than, like, your group, and I barely see any posts from them on my feed, but it's also good to know that they're out there.
Yeah, no, of course. Like, hopefully if you really needed something and you posted, people would see it,
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice. What makes you want to come on the podcast?
Because anything I've discovered, like with the experiences I've gone through, like I want to advocate for people like myself with diabetes and with other conditions. Like, I'm not saying like I'm going to say things accurately. Like, that's why I don't want to talk about autism too much. Because like, again, I'm still learning about autism, but like, I want to be a voice. I want to be like not like a guiding light, but like a...
I understand what you mean. Yeah, you would like it if you were able to share your story in case people like you have a similar story. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, I'm hoping to maybe get hired by a diabetes company of some sort. I don't know doing what, but like, I'd love to work for a company that like highlights people with diabetes or works with people with diabetes or even people with disabilities. Like, before I wanted to have a career in that, but like, now I'm seeing like there's so much like miscommunication and like misrepresentation about people with disabilities that like I think it's important.
Mm-hmm. So do you see yourself like working in the building or being like a social media like influencer for them, or what is it you're imagining?
Maybe part of both, because I'm really good at social media, as a lot of people my age are. But it'd be nice to like work with like a organization and like be employed by them.
Yeah.
Not just like a sponsored influencer or something.
Do you have any idea what you think you'd be good at?
I'm very good at writing. So like writing up posts for social media or writing up blogs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah.
And have you reached out to companies or to organizations?
I've done it a little bit, but most of them are saying, oh, well, just look at the jobs we're hiring. And most of them are like not where I'm living, or like they need you in the office like 40 hours a week. And like,
you couldn't do that, right? Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm just trying to work 20 hours right now. Like, I need to like get my like together, so to speak.
That's all right. Yeah. What devices do you wear? You have a Dexcom, I heard you say. What else?
Yes. So I have a Dexcom, and I think I'm allowed to say that I'm in the Omnipod 5 limited market release, which I guess by the time this airs will hopefully be out in full market.
I would imagine. I would imagine it would be. So tell me a little bit, like, you're in the limited market release for what? For iPhone app or for something else?
For the iPhone, yes.
Oh, wow.
Which means it's not compatible with the Dexcom G7 yet, because they, like, for the iPhone app.
Okay.
I guess they're rolling that out soon, because, like, I get so sick of those 2-hour warm-ups. Like, I have a good diabetes week, and then I'll do the 2-hour warm-up, and during that 2 hours, not knowing what my blood sugar is, like, screw it up in those 2 hours.
Tell me what happens in that gap.
I know what it is, like, every other hours of the week, but, like, those 2 hours, I don't know what it is. And, like, I don't know if it's an anxiety thing, or, like...
Does your blood sugar start to go up? Do you start eating because you're afraid you're low? And how come you...
Yeah, I think a little bit of all that, yeah.
Do you test?
I don't test as much as I should. I know, I sound like one of those people that's like, oh, that's newly diagnosed and they just want to use a Dexcom, and, like, I did the Stone Ages way, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I know it wasn't as Stone Ages as putting the needle in the boiling water and reusing it, but right. Like, I did the multiple daily injections for years, and I did the testing multiple times a day for years. Like, as I've commented on posts in the group a lot of times, I didn't get the Dexcom until I was out of high school. I think I was like 19 or 20. I went to the nurse every day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day. Sometimes I was in the nurse's office more than I was in class. Mm-hmm. Now I'm just going on a tangent.
No, sorry, I hear Scott. You. So you know that 2-hour warm-up period causes you grief, but you don't test. And can you tell me why?
Oh, you sound like my doctor.
No, I'm just asking. Listen, you can do whatever you want. I'm just asking, like, when you know that that's a pain point for you, how come you don't prioritize the testing in there?
If I felt really, really sick, like if I was peeing a lot, like, or like nauseous or whatever, I would. I'm making myself sound like a very bad diabetic, and this is going to need severe editing.
No, you're not. No, listen, I think you're sharing what's happening to you, which I think probably happens to more people than you would expect. And I'm wondering if you can add insight into what stops you from just testing a couple of times. And maybe people could say, like, I mean, you said you wanted to come on and and share your story. Like, tell me, like, what stops you? Is it just, can I give you some examples? Are you irritated that you have to do it? Do you forget? Do you find yourself feeling combative about it? Like, I shouldn't have to do this? Or do you know even?
Like, I would say a bit, like, all of the above, kind of. And then not to mention the fact that, I had to keep track of where my meter was all the time. And now that I don't really use it, I don't keep track of it as much. And
I think you could do it, Julia. I think you could, like, plan ahead and have your meter around every 10 days, don't you?
I'm not liking what I'm saying here. And, like, I'm putting my foot in my mouth. And
I think you're being honest. I just feel like you're being honest. If you're uncomfortable, you should stop. But I feel like you're being honest. Yeah.
No, Scott, what I'm doing is word vomit, essentially.
I feel like you're okay. If you're comfortable, I don't think you're doing anything wrong. You shouldn't worry about what you're doing. You're just saying what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Well, if you like, we'll move past it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Absolutely. So, okay. So you have the dog. Can I ask you, what are the, like, value adds? Like, what are the things that you've noticed having the dog have been helpful with? And are there some things that it's been a problem for? Like, what are the goods and the bads?
It's been good because, like, she makes me aware, because she'll start alerting to me like an hour, sometimes even before my Dexcom's going to go off. And, like, so she'll know, like, I'm in a normal range and she knows I'm heading either direction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which direction always, because, sometimes there's that steady arrow. And she'll be alerting when there's a steady arrow. And, like, something's happening, so you got to watch it.
And then you look and you have, like, a 125 blood sugar, but doesn't seem to be moving in either direction at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, like, 30 to 60 minutes later, that alarm's going off. Yeah. Isn't that incredible?
It is pretty incredible. Well, listen, so then my question is when she alerts you, do you just wait to see what happens next, or do you test or do something to, like, intervene?
So what I do is, like, technically I'm only supposed to, like, the service dog company only recommended doing this, like, if she's alerting to the numbers we set, like I said, 90 and 190. But since she gets so enthusiastic about, like, alerting to me and, like, doesn't, like, basically has a panic attack, I'd say, I'll give her a treat before it's the required number.
To kind of calm her down?
Yeah.
And does that stop her from alerting, though?
Not always. Oh, the other thing she does when she alerts, she pants. So, like, she'll start panting all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
And at first we just thought, is this dog extremely thirsty? Is this dog, like, very hot? Like, we couldn't understand the panting. And then I talked to some people who had diabetic alert dogs from the same organization. They said, no, their dog does the same thing.
Do you find it valuable having the dog, or is it, like, more problems than value?
Oh, 100% valuable. Like, okay. I know, like, she's only 4 now, but, like, I can't imagine living life without her. And, like, it's who's to say what the technology's like in 5-10 years, but, like, I almost kind of not want to live without a diabetic alert dog now that I've had one.
Right. Oh, that's good. Well, that's good. Yeah. So it's been a real positive experience for you.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Did I mention her name is Pretzel?
Pretzel.
I forget.
I know Pretzel. I don't know if she's a girl or a boy, but I'm imagining she's a girl because I think I hear you calling her she.
Yes, she.
Is she your only dog? Had you had a dog prior to that ever?
Oh, no. And this is where we can talk about, like, my life a little bit. So I live on a farm in rural Massachusetts, and we have 300 sheep. My parents are sheep farmers.
Wow.
And we have 1 border collie and 3 Great Pyrenees guard dogs.
Okay. And
so Pretzel has many dog friends. And she also has a lot of cat friends because we have several cats too, indoor, outdoor cats. she loves other animals.
Good. And you have other pets and working animals too.
Yeah. But this is the coolest thing, and I can't believe we only are just getting to this now. Our quote unquote new border collie, which we got this past December, started alerting to my blood sugars too.
Huh.
With no training. She is far from like the professionally trained, like perfect in person service dog. Like we've taken her out in person a couple times, and she's like, crazy because she's like, I think she's just like a year and a half now or so.
Mm-hmm. How do you think she learned?
My mother and I go back and forth, her seeing Pretzel get treats and wanting to notice that when she paws me, she gets a treat. But she's also alerted before Pretzel has. Apparently, border collies are the smartest breed or one of the smartest breeds. And we think she just has a knack for it.
She just figured it out. That's pretty awesome. That's nice.
The weird thing is we've had like 4 or 5 other border collies in my lifetime, and none of them knew how to do it. Maybe
seeing Pretzel do it somehow help that one figure it out. Hey, how come you don't work on the farm? Or do you?
I help out somewhat on the farm.
Okay. But it's not a job?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
No, I'm an only child.
Okay. How about like you said that you had a relative with type 2 and a relative with type 1. Do you have any other autoimmune issues for yourself personally or with your mom or your dad?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right. When you post in the group and you're looking for answers, do you generally find that you get some?
Yes.
You find it valuable?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed recently, and this is nothing against you, Scott, but I've noticed recently that Facebook has changed the way things are. And if you don't put an image with your post, it
ignores it a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you won't be as seen. So I try to put some sort of image in my post and make it seen.
You ask a question, you feel like you get a good response and a conversation with people?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
That's excellent. How did you find the podcast?
I actually found the Facebook group before I found the podcast. I had recently joined Facebook. Like, I was actually a late to Facebook person.
Mm-hmm.
I joined it, like, I think when I was like 18 or 19, like a year or so before the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was searching diabetes one day and your group popped up.
Oh, okay. And you got in there, popped around, figured out it was from a podcast, and now you're here. Okay. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, now I'm on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, you certainly are. That's excellent. Oh, very cool. You're using Omnipod 5, right? So
yes.
Do you find that using, like an algorithm-based system like this, has it been valuable for you? Has it made things easier? Like, what's your experience with it?
I think this is just how my body works. I don't think the Omnipod 5 keeps me in range as much as some other pumps have in the past, specifically like the Medtronic one. Like, I personally, unfortunately, had a bad experience with Tandem only because their setup is a little hard for people with dexterity issues, like myself. That's a message to Tandem to change up their system in the future for people with dexterity issues.
What about the Tandem pump did you find difficult?
Putting the insulin in that tiny hole and then attaching that tube to the other part of the system.
Okay.
It was a couple of years ago, so I kind of forgot about it now.
That's fair. And then Medtronic, you said, do you know what system you were using with Medtronic?
Yeah. I was on it up to like 1 or 2 systems before they started requiring you use their own system. So
their own CGM?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that was just a regular old insulin pump. It had you set up the basal rates. It wasn't making adjustments or anything for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say my last Medtronic was a 630G, but I don't remember.
I see. And then you went from Medtronic to Tandem, and then from Tandem to Omnipod?
Yes.
I see.
Because I was, quite frankly, just fed up with the tubing. Like, that's another thing. Like, I'm clumsy, so I used to rip out my tubing at least once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to my point about, like, where I mentioned, like, the type of body I have, like, I noticed that for whatever reason, my pods do not always last 3 days, and they'll start leaking on, like, day 2 or 2.5.
Okay.
So I have to have my prescription written for every 2 days.
Okay.
And still, I don't think it keeps me in as range as like the other ones. But I'm now trying Fiasp and hoping that will
The faster
keep me in
insulin might
range.
help.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know it's going to sound like a sin to come on here and say this, but like I also am bad at pre-bolusing. But
I don't think that sounds like a sin at all. So let me ask you, like with the Omnipod, are you thin and you have trouble finding like kind of flat spots for it? Is it like wobbling around? Do you feel like the cannula is pulling out? Like, what do you think's happening?
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm like 110 pounds about and only 4'11". So like they said that like tiny people have these issues. You would think with all the kids on the Omnipod they would fix these problems, but
do you try like one of the like tapes or over patches or anything to help it from moving? Have you ever tried that?
I use skin tack a lot. I felt that the tapes worked too much. Like I couldn't get it off when it was time.
Okay.
And it didn't necessarily help with the leaking either.
Have you ever tried your belly?
Yes, but I can only put it on one side of my belly because of my surgical scars from the hydrocephalus.
Oh, no kidding.
And also, I noticed, and I think I read someone saying this the other day on the group, that the belly is kind of a painful insertion spot.
I don't
for
know.
People
who are very thin.
Yeah.
Yeah, my daughter wears it there, and she pinches up. So let me ask you, how do you eat? Do you have any special way of eating?
I would love to say I'm keto and I eat low carb and I have a perfect time and range, but that's not the truth.
Why would you love to say that?
Because I feel like that's kind of like the right thing to say. Like, and I know like we shouldn't be talking about like, there's no really right or wrong with diabetes because like, regardless, we're going to have this for life. So I guess that's why I say that since I'm going to have this for life, why don't I just eat what I want?
Right.
Yeah.
And make sure I understand. You feel like people are listening and you should say, I eat very low carb and my blood sugar is super stable and like all that stuff, but that's not how you eat. And so,
yeah.
But earlier you said that you're in the range your doctor's happy with. Your A1C seems very reasonable. Like, so how did you learn how to bolus for the foods that you do eat?
Trial and error. I'm a very picky eater. So like, that's another reason like why I was going to tell you I'm not very good at pre-bolusing because sometimes I'll have a meal and I'm not sure how much I'm going to finish of it.
Okay. Well, it happens to me all the time. I mean, I think it happens to everybody, which is why, Julia, what you'll see people do sometimes, or something I've talked about on the podcast in the past, is I always just assume there's an amount of carbs you probably always eat, right? Like, so even if you sit down with 50 carbs or you sit down with 40 or you sit down with 80, whatever you have on your plate, you can say to yourself, you know what? I don't know how much of this I'm going to eat, but I don't think I've ever sat down and not eaten 15 carbs. So I'm going to pre-bolus the first 15. And then as I see the rest of this food's happening, I'll put in the rest of the insulin, which is kind of how the reason I think of it that way is it's how I used to do it when Arden was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
But anyway, what happens? You eat, your blood sugar shoots up, you got to bring it back down, or it comes back down on its own?
Yeah. And then that's the other thing that I'll say about, how I talk about knowing what my blood sugar is 24/7.
Yeah.
Like when I start to see those double down or double up, I start to like either rage bolus or rage eat.
Okay.
And I don't do that all the time, but it's become a little bit of a pattern and it's worse on some days than others.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what happens like if you see a shooting up blood sugar, for example, is that like you're like, oh, I didn't put in any insulin or I didn't put in enough insulin?
Yeah, I didn't put in enough. And then I don't always correct if there's a double up, depending on how long ago I corrected. Like right now I'm going double up and I corrected.
At this moment?
233. Yeah.
Is that food or do you think you're experiencing adrenaline?
It's food.
Okay.
But also probably a little bit of adrenaline because, I was nervous to come on here and talk to you.
Yeah, you said before we started recording that you were nervous. Do you still feel nervous now?
I thought I talked a little bit too much about disabilities, my gripes about being disabled. So I was not very happy with that part of the conversation. But I'm also glad that I did talk about disabilities in a sense. So
let me ask you a question. Would you, if you like, when this gets edited, like we could take your name out of it, would that make you comfortable? Like in the beginning, you said, hi, my name's Julia. But what instead, if it was like, hi, my name's, and there was a blank space where you said your name and then it went on, would that be better for you?
No, I didn't say my last name. So I think it's okay.
Okay.
Like,
whatever you want. You just let me know, okay?
Yeah. Just as long as it's not going to prevent me from getting a job, I guess. My parents are always saying, be careful what you post online because it sticks with you forever and your potential employers could be watching. I think that's a myth, but.
Well, listen, if someone hears you, I mean, I've only been talking to you for 45 minutes, but I would think that if someone hears you talking in here, they'd be interested in you working for them. So.
Yeah, I'd hope so too.
Yeah, I think you're doing yourself solid here. I think you're representing yourself very well.
I was actually planning on talking about a little bit less about the disability. It flowed well into the conversation, I'd say.
I'm happy that you're happy with it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So your blood sugar might shoot up if you don't bolus right away. Sometimes you put insulin on, sometimes you don't. But what about when it's falling very quickly? Like, does that, I mean, it must be scary, I imagine. So what do you do? That
makes me want to eat like a lot and like fast. And like, back, like I keep saying back in the day, I'm an old person, but it was really only like 7 or 8 years ago when I graduated high school. Like, they had all these rules, but, you have to prick your finger. You have to go to the nurse 3 times a day and prick your finger. Mm-hmm. And we will not let you eat treat a low until you're 70 or below. And like now I'm treating it like way earlier than that. So
yeah.
I often like scroll through the group and I see all these people talking about how like their school, like the kids can like manage their diabetes on their own. They sometimes will text their parents their blood sugar without even having to go to the nurse. Like I kind of wish I had that freedom. Although I do think the whole having to have a cell phone out in school thing is a little bit complicated. But with diabetes, I don't think it should be locked away either.
Right. Yeah, I understand what you mean. Hey, do you have help with your blood sugar management? Do your parents help you?
Not so much anymore. If anything, Pretzel is my help. She keeps me in line, I'd say.
But like when you got Omnipod 5, for example, like do your parents help you set up the settings, or did that something you did with your healthcare provider, or you did it yourself?
No, I did it myself.
Excellent. Good for you.
Yeah. I shouldn't say this either, but I've set up the last few pumps without training, and I think
you're doing all right.
I'm supposed to have training. Yeah.
Julia, I love how everything you say, you're like, I don't think I should be saying this, but here it is.
And, I don't really think of myself as a person that really says controversial things.
I don't think,
but like, for some reason, Scott, you're really bringing it out in me today. And I don't know what it is. Maybe I just feel like you're a diabetes whisperer and I can tell you all my secrets and all my...
Oh, well, I'm happy you're comfortable. I would tell you that I don't think that having set up your own system without your doctor is controversial. I'm sure a lot of people have done that.
Yeah.
You've had diabetes a long time, right? You know what your basal looks like. You understand how to bolus. You know what your carb ratio is. That's, pretty much it, right? Yeah. Insulin sensitivity.
Yeah.
Do you find that stuff changing throughout the month for you, or is it pretty stable?
Are you talking about like on a hormonal level since I'm a woman?
I am. Yeah. And your settings, yeah.
Okay. I am on birth control. I actually just take it to regulate my periods because like when I was like 18 or 19, I was like having really heavy periods and I was like sick of it. And I went to a new doctor and I got on the birth control, the pill. That like, I pretty much got my period maybe like once a year.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
I don't know about how that's being accomplished, but that sounds nicer.
The other thing I kind of wonder is on the days, if I was like supposed to get my period, had I not been on the birth control, are there certain days that my blood sugar may be worse? And I wasn't very good at tracking my cycles, so I don't really know how to tell that either. Okay.
Is the variability pretty, like you're not seeing like significantly different blood sugar, like insulin needs week to week or something like that?
No.
So that makes it easier for you to manage things.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I will say that and I don't know if it's because of the leaking pod issue, but my carb ratios are 4-7 right now. And like, for me, 4-7 seems like extremely like almost like I don't want to go much lower than 4-7.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some people are at lower, but I like,
So depending on the time of the day, your blood sugar, your carb ratio is 1 unit covers 4 up to 1 unit covers 7. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I mean.
So do you feel like you have a little insulin resistance?
Yeah, and I'm hoping that the Fiasp is going to help with that. It's interesting. I've been on the Omnipod limited market release trial for, I think, just like over a month now, maybe a month and a half. I thought I was going to be 100% better about like bolusing on time, like bolusing as soon as I eat, like just because I'm not carrying around two devices.
I hear you.
And like now I've only been slightly better at that because it's like, I'm always looking for my PDM. Like, where's my PDM? Did I lose it? Oh my gosh, what happened to it?
Now it's just on your phone. And it's talk about it a little bit. Tell me why it's difficult to pre-bolus consistently.
Maybe the organizational skills, maybe the picky eating,
right?
Or maybe just the fact that I am still getting used to it being on my phone. That's the other thing. I have to be careful because, like, I can see why the kids have their cell phones locked up in school. Like, these cell phones can be quite addicting. So
you get into that phone and you start doing other stuff. Is that what happens, Julia?
Yes.
Yeah.
My mother's on me about that all the time.
What grabs your attention in your phone?
A lot of people say like scrolling and like.
So like Instagram?
Yeah, different things basically.
You don't want to say, Julia?
Maybe not.
It's okay. You don't have to.
Yeah.
But basically, the phone. You open up the phone and you get a little sidetracked.
Yeah, and like I don't think it would have helped me in high school. Like, yes, I would have loved to have my phone on me in high school because, high school is boring and stuff like that. And I do think there's reasons, and
Gotcha.
Now I have to have my phone on me 24/7. Whereas before, as long as I had my PDM and I didn't leave my phone for too long, I was okay. Like, I don't want it to say signal loss for hours on it. And
right. I hear you. I got you. I think most people open their phone and get distracted by something else. So there's a lot of shiny stuff in there, and a lot of those algorithms are written to keep your attention, and it works. So.
Yeah,
I hear you.
Another thing I always talk about is I live in rural Massachusetts, and we get hit quite a bit with snow and rain and all that in the winter. I'm like, well, what happens in a power outage? Like, am I not going to be able to bolus? Like, what's going to happen? Like, thankfully we haven't had that happen.
Oh, you worry about what if power goes out for too long? How do I charge my phone or my devices or something?
Yeah, because not just on the reliance on technology for just me being a young person, but now on the medical standpoint, it's a medical device.
Okay. Well, listen, I would tell you, here's the easy answer, in my opinion. Go out to the car, plug it in the car, let the car run, and charge it there.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've done that before. We've had power outages since Arden's had diabetes, some kind of extensive stuff. And we did that's exactly what we did. We were like, all right, well, I guess we're just going to have to go charge it up in the car. And we did, so that worked out really well, I thought.
Yeah. I overbuy those power bank things. I have a lot of those. So, yeah.
So you have a little anxiety about that. Is that right?
Well, yes, Scott, we discussed this earlier that I have an anxiety disorder.
I know, but I'm letting people hear about it. So does the disorder have a name?
Technically, I think it's OCD. Yeah, because that's what they said with the autism diagnosis, that it's like an anxiety disorder related to OCD.
Okay, and they think that's what they think is part of the autism diagnosis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And not the hydrocephaly can't do that?
I mean, that's what I would like to know too, but I haven't really been able to find out much information on it.
I mean, I looked online for you just now. Yeah. I don't know true or not true it is, obviously, but it says that obsessive compulsive disorder can potentially develop in individuals with hydrocephalus or other neurological conditions. So maybe.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is something I'm going to have to talk to my neurosurgeon about, and maybe I'll have talked to him by the time this episode comes out, and
possible.
I could write you a little note and say, this is what my neurosurgeon said.
Yeah. It's just, it says potentially. I don't know that it, I mean, it doesn't mean it did or anything or not. Yeah, I'm not discounting the other thing, but do you have rituals, like counting rituals or anything like that?
No, it's more the obsessive thoughts. Like, again, it could also be somehow related to my tic, but I went to a neurologist and they were like, no, we don't know what to do. So you have to go somewhere else. That wasn't very helpful.
We don't know what to do. Go somewhere else is definitely not helpful. No.
Oh, they were like, we can't help you, but we'd like you to have come in for another appointment.
Mm-hmm. We'll take $40 more, but we're pretty sure we can't help.
That's the other thing that's amazing about Massachusetts. I'm lucky enough to be on Mass Health. So, like, I get my insulin and all my prescriptions and everything for, like, free.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm still a proponent of insulin for all, because how can you not be a proponent of insulin for all?
Of course.
But,
I agree.
I've been lucky enough I don't have to pay for it.
Good. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's working out for you. So give me just one example of like obsessive thoughts, like what something gets stuck in your head. Like what's an example of something that you've been through before?
Well, I sent you that email last week and you were like, Julia, please don't overthink this. Like all those questions about the podcast and preparing for it. And I'm like,
yeah, because I don't know you prior to, like, I hope people understand, like, until you tell me I have an autism diagnosis when we're speaking, I don't know that. I didn't know about hydrocephalus. I didn't know about that. Like, so I get to learn, I get to know you while we're recording, just like everybody else does.
Yeah. No.
I see your point though. Yeah. You asked a lot of questions. I'm like, you don't need to overthink this. Just show up and we'll talk and it'll all work out.
I'm not calling you out, Scott. I know. Promise.
Julia, I know you're not. Don't worry. You and I are getting along very well. Don't you worry. I understand you.
I was just using that as the most recent example I could think of.
Yeah. So what happens is you start thinking about it and then you feel like you have to do something about it?
Yeah. Like, kind of like when I'm trying to figure out, like, what I'm doing with my life. Like, I email those support people, like, the vocational rehab or, like, different support services. And, like, I mean, I guess it's kind of hard not having a job right now and, like, not knowing when my next job is. But, like, or, quite frankly, what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the biggest concern there? Is it that you don't have a direction or that you don't have money? Because your parents are helping you, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, kind of I don't have a direction. And then also kind of that I don't have a degree, technically. I'm like, I did like 50 credits towards a degree, but like no math and no science.
Does that concern you?
Well, I often say to myself, like, if I'm going to have a hard time getting hired because I'm disabled, how much of a harder time am I going to have getting hired if I'm disabled and don't have a degree?
Okay.
And, Scott, I feel like I'm using you as a therapy session, which I was hoping not to, but,
Doesn't matter.
We had a second meeting. You would know that this is right on character for me.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have anything that we haven't talked about that we should have or anything you feel like we've missed?
Let's see. Be kind to people with disabilities, obviously. This is how I'm going to leave people. Like, be kind to people with disabilities. Know that everybody's going through something that you don't know what they're going through. I highly recommend that if you can, get a diabetic alert dog. And, like, don't be afraid to fundraise because, like, I fundraised and, like, made the money and, like, it's not necessarily taking charity.
Did you feel bad at first when you started doing it, or no?
No, because, like, my community where I live is very generous.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad you found people that are very supportive that were willing to help you. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad that the podcast group is helpful for you too. I'm glad it's there for you and you're finding value with it.
Yes, and maybe by the time this airs, I'll listen to every episode.
Oh, good luck. There's a lot of them. I don't know. I was talking to somebody the other day and they were telling me all the stuff they know about the podcast. And I thought, I don't even know if I know all that. That's really something. So
it's like somebody who like rewatches like the same show like over and over again. It's like, I don't know, their favorite TV show and like knows everything about it. And like the TV stars don't know anything about it.
Yeah, no, I find it's lovely that people like it so much that they would listen and listen again. It gets a little weird when people think they know what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? Or they make some big assumptions and stuff like that. I'm like, oh gosh, that's not even right. But how do I explain that to you? And if I do, you're just going to think you're just going to think I don't understand or I'm making it up or something. So sometimes you get in these weird little loops with people where it's very strange. Like they seem very well intended, but they feel like they know things. And I'm like, oh gosh, you're misunderstanding this, but there's not much I can do about that. So anyway, I really appreciate you doing this with me. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Oh, Scott, would it be possible if I sent you a picture of Pretzel? And I don't know if you can put like...
Yeah, send me a good picture. I can put it with the episode.
Yeah, okay, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Make it a landscape, you know what I mean? Like a little wider than tall, and get a nice high-res picture, send it to me. I'll put it like when I put the episode up on the website, I'll use the picture.
Yeah. And I'll make sure to get one with her service dog vest so everybody knows she's a service dog.
Nice. And it's okay if I call the episode Pretzel?
That'd be perfect.
Okay. Maybe I'll call it a bowl of pretzels. Yeah. Who knows? We'll figure it out.
Oh, that'd be funny.
All right. Hold on 1 second for me. Okay. Stay with me. US Med sponsored this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Check them out at usmed.com/juicebox or by calling 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits check and get started today with US Med. I'd like to thank the blood glucose meter that my daughter carries, the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox. And don't forget, you may be paying more through your insurance right now for the meter you have than you would pay for the Contour NextGen in cash. There are links in the show notes of the audio app you're listening in right now and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Contour and all of the sponsors. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. If you're not already subscribed or following the podcast in your favorite audio app like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do that now. Seriously, just to hit follow or subscribe will really help the show. If you go a little further in Apple Podcasts and set it up so that it downloads all new episodes, I'll be your best friend. And if you leave a 5-star review, I'll probably send you a Christmas card. Would you like a Christmas card? If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.